Copy.
We'll see. No, she won't listen.
You good? We popping first or we eating first? You know how this works.
That's a good question.
You gotta pop. Oh, that's tasty. This looks even tastier. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the first annual Bow Launch podcast. Welcome.
Howdy, folks. Here we go.
We got a fantastic day for you, and it's a long ass deal. We got a big one lined up, so we're just grabbing a little sustenance.
Fellas got to eat, you know.
Sponsored by Josh Jones.
Yeah. A little burger patty with an egg and some cheese. It's good.
Of course. What kind of burger are we looking at?
This is the neighbor's cow, actually.
It's pretty good, Neighbor's Cow, man.
Yeah, it's been really good.
How's your freezer supply doing?
Surprisingly well. I do need to get some larger form of red meat before the end of the year, probably. But if I stopped right now, I would make it till spring pretty easily, at least. Something like that.
Yeah.
How about you? How's yours looking?
Similar.
Yeah.
I can get to the next season, which is spring bear,
Yeah.
but I got room for a Washington whitetail.
One or two more in the hopper would be nice. I still got bears are pretty much denned up now, so bear season's done. But I still have a Washington deer tag, an Idaho deer tag that opens later, an Idaho elk tag, and a Washington elk tag still. So there's still room for some growth.
I just had a target buck show up.
Aren't you lucky? It's not been a great year in that regard for me, but
No,
how clockwork is he?
he just started showing up, but it was daylight.
Nice.
So he's got like 2 daylight sightings.
Sweet. Similar
He has
times?
beautiful chocolate horns, and it's the second chocolate horn animal I've seen there. Do you think around here, because I haven't seen much of that, like darker antlers.
Yeah.
Do you see much?
Well, I think it varies, but I think it's less common, to be honest. You look at what's on the wall up there, and there's not much for really dark. There's one or two that are pretty dark, but in general, they're not.
I'll do the dishes today. I don't mind.
Yeah, it's not too difficult, that's for sure.
Is this your standard lunch? One of?
Some days. That was extra. I don't know if you're still hungry. You can have it if you
No,
want.
I'm good. I'm feeling
Well,
good.
I'm going to leave it.
In case somebody gets hungry later.
This is one of my more standard lunches. I'm trying to get those evil little carbohydrates out of my diet. It's always hard. I go through phases. I'll run like a year or two where I won't care, and then I'll look in the mirror and feel fluffy and get pissed and stop eating them for a while.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I always feel better if I'm not eating a lot of carbs.
No,
Like
typically
my actual energy through the day feels better.
it's more stable because a carb is a fast burn, right? So you ingest it, you get your spike, and then you get your digestion, and it fluctuates a lot. So
But some people run really good on carbs, man. Like,
yeah,
especially like really skinny body types.
yeah. And if you're like a high exercise, skinny, always moving, then you're constantly eating, then you're fine. It's when you can't sit there and just constantly eat small amounts and graze. It's
Yeah,
harder.
and when you roll into your 30s and you realize your metabolism slows down, and then all of a sudden you can't eat as many sugars.
Yeah, for sure. There's a very big. You start paying attention to a lot of things you weren't paying attention to.
It's a real thing. Well, how do you want to kick off the annual mega bow drop podcast of 2024?
Well, gosh, there's so many different ways we could start that. We could start that with I'm a big fat liar. I've been bought by Mathews. What else?
We are sponsored, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, totally sponsored. Yeah, no, we get nothing. No, it's all in all, it's an incredible year. Like if you start weighing them out and looking at what's made and the renditions and the changes and the improvements, most brands have made some big jumps. They really have. Whereas last year, I think just about anybody would consider it pretty stale. Like there wasn't really a lot of big movement. Some brands did some reasonable amount of stuff, but others kind of sat still. And in general, I would say there was a lot of big jumps for most of them. So we just want to go like through one brand at a time. You think?
I think I like what you did there. Let's start broad, and then we'll work into the brands. My first impression of the drops, couple brands kind of blew my mind. I think they changed a lot of things. And then a couple brands I felt underwhelmed by. But as I really dug into what they changed, I was like, no, I'm wrong. Like these are good innovations from a year-to-year perspective. Mm-hmm. And I do think most brands push their product forward quite a bit.
Yeah, sometimes you overlook the changes that they made as like not super significant until you actually go back and look at what it is and then go, oh, wow, that was actually a pretty decent change from one to the next. Or like maybe they have 4 new bows and 2 of them were really a lot, and then some of the things that from the 2 that incorporated into the others, but not as much. So you can't expect like an immense amount. But as years have gone, I would say there was a lot of good, strong changes from the major players for sure. From the main major players have made some big jumps.
Yeah, you've seen this innovation cycle happen for years and years and years. How many years do you think between like major innovation changes? 5?
Traditionally, a bow manufacturer is going to make a big change every 3 to 5, somewhere in there. And I would lean more towards the 5 mark. I think that's a really good number. Sometimes it's every 4 years. Sometimes it's every 6 years, but they'll make changes, but it's like, so it kind of looks like you reinvented your own wheel a little bit and didn't like redesign the wheel. You just moved it a little. Whereas every 5 or so, they'll usually make a very large jump in what they change. They'll make a drastic change to their product.
Yeah, and I think, part of me expects like, oh, they're going to change the whole frame every year. But then I start thinking about like cars and other things that innovate, and they usually stick with like a body style and a frame for 3 to 5 years.
And make some mechanical changes or some technical improvements. But when you look at like a great example is last year with Mathews going from a V3X to a Phase 4. They got poo-pooed a lot for not making change. I'm like, well, one, you made an 8-limb bow with a rubber insert in it. That's pretty unique. Like nobody's ever done anything like that. But they got poo-pooed a lot for not making a lot of big change. To me, that was actually a pretty drastic thing. The work that would go into making that happen and not fail is a lot. And people really overlook that because, well, it's just as fast and it weighs the same and it feels similar, a little less vibration, but not drastic. You made a stabilizer attachment, whoop-de-doo, right? They didn't get a lot of credit for that. And both of those things were relatively different, like authentic change, not like, hey, so-and-so did this 2 years ago, let's incorporate it into our bow. They authentically had something that no one had done and didn't even get a lot of credibility for it. I think they got, glossed over a lot.
I remember that launch really, really well, vividly. And one of the top criticisms at that time was, hey, the rubber gasket's not going to, or we don't know if the rubber gasket's going to be a good thing or if it's going to shrivel up and fail. But now we're 1 year later. How's that doing?
Well, I can tell you this much. They tested that for over 10 years before it went out in the market.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So Mathews doesn't traditionally launch a product that will fail, like has a possibility of failure. Because as the size of the company that they are, that's a lot of expense. They're not going to do that. And they have a tendency to patent everything that they can possibly think up. So most of what you see for them has been in the works for a long time. It's not hey, we thought of this year, let's change that. It's we thought of this 6 years ago or 8 years ago or 10 years ago, and we've been messing with it for a long period of time before it actually comes out.
Well, major brands that you sell in the shop, let's rattle them off. It's Prime, PSE, Bowtech, Hoyt, Mathews. Did I miss any?
Elite.
Elite.
Elite, and we're dealers for just about everything under the sun.
Yep.
Like almost anybody will send us a product, but that's what we stock. We do stock diamond bows, we do stock mission bows, and the price points. And you missed Fred Bear. We do also stock Fred Bear.
baby. Yeah.
Well, Bear for the money is a hard bow to argue with.
Hey man,
it really is.
Two of my biggest videos this year have come from shooting the budget bow.
Yeah, and that's been a bit of an overlook, I think, from all this stuff.
Yeah, I've learned that it's a good thing to do. I've learned a lot doing it, and also people really appreciate it because a lot of people are new to the sport and they may need to choose how they need to spend their dollars. They got to buy tags, they got to buy boots, maybe a backpack, maybe a bow. So, being able to start with something and then work your way up it's important.
Well, for sure. It's definitely a part of the market that, from like a YouTube standpoint, it's been ignored a lot, and it's something that we all need to pay more attention to and add more emphasis into. It's very relevant, but it's hard to argue with the product that they make for the price tag that they ask for it. It really is.
So we mentioned all the major brands. Let's start with who blew your socks off the least.
Well, let's just go with the brands I tested. So probably Prime. And I hate to say that because they did actually come out with a very appealing price point bow, which excited me a lot. But if you look at their flagships, if we're talking flagships, they remachined the riser a little bit and put a pick mount and a rear mount in it, and angled the cable guard, which I think out of all the major brands that I carry, probably did the least. I don't know. It would kind of be a toss up between them and Elite because Elite didn't really. I mean, they made a really nice bow. Like, don't get me wrong. The bow that came out with the Ethos is really nice. Like the specs, the weight, the speed, the dimensions, the tunability.
Yep.
It was all great. It wasn't anything new though. Like they didn't add features to the bow that didn't exist last year. They just made it a more popular dimension. Or a more appealing to me dimension, I guess is probably the way to look at it. It was probably more of this is the kind of bow I'd like to shoot, as opposed to what they made the previous year. So
yeah, so
I'd put those kind of equal.
Let's start with Prime then, and let's go through the Prime flagship bows. And I'm by far the least educated on Prime, so I'll lean on you a little bit. I'll ask questions like the audience might. And let's go through what Prime did. Do we have a Prime here?
Yeah, we do. It's the closest one to you. I grabbed the most appealing one. That's their price point version. I should probably clarify that I should definitely give the least excited to Prime because even though Elite and Prime didn't really make massive jumps by any means, the one thing I can say is the Prime speed was way off and Elite's wasn't. Mm-hmm. So I guess
Elite's was actually low-key pretty fast.
Elite's was low-key fast. Like it really was. So anyway, the Primes are making a 32, a 34, and a 36 in the RVX version. Yeah, do we just need to let her in?
Yeah, I'll let her in.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right. So Prime's making 3 different axle-to-axle dimensions on that platform, the RVX 32, 34, 36. They all have slightly different brace heights and slightly different speeds, but all of them were consistently 20 to 22 feet a second slower than they were advertised at. In our tests, Prime does a couple of unique things that most other manufacturers don't do. They do an 8,000 series aluminum. They do instead of a 6,000 or 7,000, depending on who you are. So it's a more expensive aluminum, harder to cut. They make a really nice quality product, but if you're going to put a bow out that you say is 340 and it's going to come out at 320, hey, knock it off. You're gonna end up with some criticism from me, even if the speeds were still slower than the other guys too. So it's not part of the speed rating thing, which I got some comments and criticisms on there. I'm not just going off of your speed. I'm going off of what did you build and what speed did it shoot, and in my mind, what should it have done. So it's not just a straight, well, you said it was 340 and you're getting 320, so piss off. If you get off by a long ways, I'm going to be mean. Like I am, because I understand the fuckery that ensues to make your bow shoot the speed that you're advertising it at in the factory, right? You're trying to get it to put that out. Once you get to know them quite a bit as far as brands are concerned, and you have real conversations with them, you're not walking into their factory, grabbing a bow off the rack and getting that speed out of it with a normal arrow. It's just not happening. So that's why I give like a 10 foot a second leeway where I'm not going to give you a really hard time. If you're within 10 feet, you're probably being relatively honest with what you're advertising and what I get. And that's usually the guideline I go off of. I'll even be a little lenient being a couple feet outside of it. There could be a little things right there. Say, hey, this probably should be about 3 or 4 slower advertised than they're being advertised. But when you're out by 20 plus, I'm gonna not be nice about it because that's just too much. Like you're fudging your numbers beyond an extent that I believe you could even get. Hey, knock it off. All eyeballing the food. Oh yeah, look, Dad, I'm cute. Yeah,
and it's kind of it's a public check and balance, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah,
and that's where the measurements come in.
Yeah, and this is just an evolution of transparency from business because in a lot of industries in the past, you could say one thing and didn't always have to hold up because how are people going to find out? Maybe Joe Blow somewhere tests it and tells his friends, but he doesn't have a microphone to the world.
Right.
Now everybody's got a microphone to the world. So my general advice would be to be transparent, and you're going to build brand loyalty versus trying to advertise something that might look good and then not test good. You're just going to lose audience trust.
Well, I can definitely say, since I started putting out videos like this, the numbers that you would get advertised have changed a lot. Like they all were pretty blatant because everyone was doing it. It's one of those things where it's like, well, we're all fudging by 15 to 20, so we're all doing the same thing. You're going to get a similar result no matter who you test, so it doesn't look that bad. But since we've
the guy down the street's 15 feet per second off, so why would I?
So why would I not be 15 feet a second off? Because there's no checks and balances to this program. So I like to think that what we're doing has actually changed it. Like you're not seeing the same stretches of speed variance. In fact, like there was one particular that I tested last year that was 14 feet off across the board, and the bow I tested the other day was only like 6 or 8. Like it was drastically better than what they were doing before. One that I really liked a lot that I threw under the bus for being like way too far off.
You say who it was?
I was Bowtech.
Yeah.
They aren't off at all anymore. Like they're really close. Like they not only did they actually produce the fastest bow I tested this year, I think the worst they were is 8. Ooh, we need to pause.
We were rudely interrupted. We were rudely interrupted by a manufacturer, but the highlight of the conversation is basically to summarize, and manufacturers are listening. Right?
Yeah. The last part of that conversation was just so you know, we're going to reassess this next year and try to make sure that we're putting out a speed that's more attainable by the average person and the average person of what they're doing. So making a difference.
Yeah.
One little bit at a time. How do you like that?
One small YouTube video war at a time.
Yeah, I guess when you end up with the most views out of anybody for most of it, and you mention your gripes, they're probably paying attention, which is cool.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's nice to feel like one, someone's capable of kind of holding them accountable, and two, that your input might actually make a difference in what they choose to make overall.
You're the CoffeeZilla of archery.
I don't even know what CoffeeZilla is.
Oh,
no.
He made it on Rogan, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
he was
right
a guy trying to oust scammers.
Cool.
And making YouTube videos about it, and he's built a mega following.
Scammers like what?
Scammers, like one of the big stories he did was the Logan Paul. God, I don't want to summarize it too much, but the Logan Paul made some type of crypto zoo. Logan Paul invented crypto zoo. There's a lot of investors. Those investors never saw any kind of money from it. I don't know. A lot of stories like this that otherwise wouldn't be made public.
Gotcha.
But yeah, you're the freedom fighter of the archery world.
Well, I that's pretty bold. I don't know if I'd go that far.
Whatever.
But
yeah, it's
just
fun.
hey, let's test this stuff and see what it does, and go, huh? And I've always known what they do because before we ever made videos, it was one of those, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, how are you getting 12 feet more a second? And explain it to me. And there's a whole mash of things that they can do to get this. Like, You put a soft tied knock on the string instead of a D loop. There's 2.5 feet. You like if it in Mathews' exception, they say it has monkey tails on it. Oh, you're gonna put it out. You can't put it down too much or she go out. The monkey tails are like 2 foot a second too, right? So if you're testing a bow with monkey tails on it in a string loop versus not, there's like 4.5 feet, right? If you test an arrow without fletching versus with fletching, mind you, if you still build it to weigh the same, an arrow without fletching is going to go faster than an arrow with fletching. If you shoot it off of a center rest as opposed to a whisker biscuit or a fall away, it's going to go a little faster. I mean, there's all kinds of things they can do to make it get a couple of feet here, a couple of feet there, and the combination of those things end up being 10, 12, which is why when you look at what I'm reporting and I say you're within 10, I don't think you're being blatant. I think, yeah, you probably did get that, and you probably didn't have to do anything ridiculously special to your bow other than to set it up in that manner, which no one's going to use it as. You know, if you throw a peep in your string, you'll lose 2 feet a second like that, right? Well, so don't test it with a peep in it, which I don't test them with peeps in them either because that's the way I get the bow. I just put a string loop on it because I know you're all using one. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to test it without it because you're all using that. But in any event, we were talking about prime before we got
Did we do a
rudely
good job
interrupted.
covering prime?
I don't think so. No, and don't get these things too close to the fire, man. I'll get hot. I can
That's
feel
hot
it getting warm
inventory,
here.
dog. We ain't trying to destroy inventory.
I hear you. Yeah, we can't have that. So Prime was off the most on speed, and I don't want to beat him into the ground because it's not very
They got
fair.
them wide limbs rocking too, huh?
Yeah, they've got really wide limbs, which is great for stability platform. They have the same cam system as before, but they did add let-off adjustability within the cam system. It is a module system, and it's a module system because that's typically the most efficient way to do it. Like a pivoting module usually isn't as efficient. So if you're trying to squeeze speed out, that's usually where you get it from, which is also one of the other maddening things as to why this bow was as slow as it was, because you're doing what you can to maintain speed in design, but they're not quite getting it, which I'm not sure why. And I will say this, their bow pulled great. Like I gave it like really high marks for draw cycle. I want to say I give it a 5 because it pulls really easy, but if your bow's 10 foot a second slower than everybody else's, it's probably going to pull really easy. And that's a reflection of that. Like in the instance of like from the Core SR to their bows averaged 320 and the Core SR was 340. So that's 20 foot a second difference. And the measurable specs weren't hardly different in those bows. So that's a lot. Now that being said, that Ronin, which is what I grabbed to show, this bow is $850. Like, so as far as a bow is concerned, they made it out of 6061. They didn't put the Picatinny front and the IMS rear that's on the new bows. That's what's on the 32, the 34, the 36. They have front and rear mount pick systems and their own unique quiver attachment system, which is unique to them and pretty cool. It's pretty low profile. But to take those two things off and make the riser out of 6061, which is what a lot of manufacturers use anyway, instead of 8000 series aluminum, to go down to $850, this is a hell of a bow for $850, right? So that's, if you're looking for a price point reflective thing, this is a hard bow to beat. But when you're talking $1,200 and your speed's drastically slower and you're not incorporating like a ton of unique features to yourself, you are adding a front mount Picatinny and a rear mount IMS, which is nice, and your own quiver system. And I can't recall if they have their own V-bar. I don't think they do. But they're doing some feature-related stuff. But to be that slow, like if I tested 7 bows that all had the same specs and one of them was 10 foot a second slower than the other 6, you're probably getting berated a little bit. You just are. And if you're trying to say they're all the same speed too, that's the part that's really going to get you on me. Because most bow manufacturers are advertising about 340 anymore on their hunting bows. That's typically the speed that you're seeing. And most of them are coming in around 330, which I'm okay with. Like, I know what you did to get that 10 feet, so we're okay. But when you present me 20, that's a lot. Now, I did get a little bit of controversial gripes from Mathews was quite a bit slow of what they said. One, they were advertising one of the fastest speeds out of anybody. I think they advertised the fastest speed, which, you know, not super jacked about. Like
I think they were the only one in their messaging too. I noticed that said up to, you know, and
yeah,
that's like I get it.
Yeah, they're trying to clarify that you're probably not getting this,
but you want to be closer to that up to number.
And I am going to give them a gripe. Because if you're going to tell me that 80% let off is 4 feet a second faster than 85%, which I can believe from them because they redesigned the modules. It's like most bow manufacturers, when they go from like 80 to 85, they're just moving the peg. It's the same module, and you're getting a higher let off point, right? So when you do that, I totally get it not really being faster because it's the same module. Mathews redesigns every module at 80% and at 85%. So they should get more speed out of it. But you're telling me it's 4 feet, but I can't test it because I don't have one.
That stinks.
And I'm sure the customer is going to gripe. And understand from where I'm coming from, guys, you're putting me in a really hard position on both ends, right? The manufacturer's not giving me the product to actually test that way in that manner, so I can't actually test it. I just have to trust that it's 4 feet a second faster. And then when I test the bow out, I say that, so I give them the 4 feet. And then on the other end, everybody's bitching about it, right? So they're saying, well, that was 17 feet slow. I was like, no, it's 13 feet slow because you have to give the 4 feet for the let off that I can't test, right? And
you just need a module, right?
Yeah, it's just a module, but they haven't even sent any yet.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they've made them, they've designed them, but they're 85% is what the bows typically get shipped in to begin with, right? So they're manufacturing and producing 85% modules because that's what's going on the bows standard. And then if you want an 80% module, you can buy it. Now, at a certain point, you'll be able to order the bow that way, but not in the first month of production.
Yeah, but let me add to that. So
go ahead.
Mathews does a fantastic job with their messaging and getting all of their, call it pro staff team, bows early.
They do.
And whether that pro staff shooter is shooting whatever nuanced version of the bow, they have it months early. That's one of the reasons Mathews is so good at their marketing and their messaging. They can figure it out to get you what you need to give an accurate test, especially if they want that test reflected honestly and accurately. You know what I'm saying? That's not a huge ask for a couple modules.
No, it's not, Tim, but at the same point, part of the conversation I just had is these numbers are probably going to be reflected different next year, and I won't have to make these arguments. But
wait, we never said that conversation was with Mathews.
Well, that was one of them. I've had conversations with everybody.
Oh, right.
Like they're all. I've gotten every bow manufacturer I've made a bow review on, with the exception of PSE, because it literally launched this morning. I've gotten calls from everyone, including Prime, where I was, hey, you're 20 plus feet slow, and this is ridiculous. And they're like, we're literally grabbing bows right now and testing them. Like, this is weird. Like, we did not expect that, and we're trying to figure it out right now. So, I mean, I guess this is relevant, and they're really being held to account. I got really good feedback from Bowtech, but there wasn't anything to gripe about other than nobody said anything about their bridgey lock. But we haven't even got to them yet. I should probably try to stay on
we should
track.
probably get back
We're
on
a couple
bows.
of squirrels that are running in circles here, folks. Sorry.
Yeah, we should probably get back on bows.
Yeah, well, that was Prime for the most part.
And we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I think that one's covered well.
So the highlights of a Prime, right? Let's go highlights.
Highlights of the Prime is they added integration. So they added a front mount pick, a rear mount on the $1,200 bows. Mind you, I want to say they're $1,199 and $1,299 as far as their prices are concerned.
Yeah, we're going to use round numbers.
They changed to add you an adjustable let-off, which they didn't have that before, and it's a part that screws onto the module and changes the let-off. I want to say they cut the riser a little different, but the geometry looks the same.
It's similar.
It's not the extrusion. I think they use an extruded metal, if I remember right. The extrusion's not different, but the cuts are different. Brace height's relatively the same. Axle to axle's relatively the same. Draw length's relatively the same. Cam's the same. Same grip. They do have their own little thermo rubberized grip that bolts over their metal, which works actually surprisingly well. When you touch it, it doesn't feel cold. That's kind of their little feature, rather than, hey, why make a carbon bow so it doesn't feel cold? Why not just make something over the handle so it doesn't feel cold?
You know what else is thermo rubberized? Wood.
True. Let's just make them out of wood. Sweet.
Yeah. Old school, baby.
Back in
They
the
had
old
that
school
going
days,
right in the 70s.
I had a wooden compound bow when I was little.
Oh, I just remember the wooden grips on the old Mathews is what I remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, then you still got metal in the front, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Well,
can't
who's
get the
gripping,
whole
dog? You can't be gripping. If you're gripping, you're tripping. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you got to carry it. That's when you're shooting it. You got to carry it, so you're still touching this cold piece of metal. So I get I definitely get the relevance of that and the importance of it. But in general, that's big. All right. So
okay, now a couple things that could be better with Prime. A little short list. Speed is obviously that
either advertise a real speed or get your bow to go faster. If you're really truly trying to allure to people on feel, then don't try to give them a fake number that you're probably not going to hit, or that it's going to be. Let's just be real. I test almost everybody's bows. Some of the smaller companies that I don't buy from, we don't have a relationship, so I haven't gotten their bows. I could order them and pay for them, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're getting an awful lot of press here for this, so I don't really feel I should pay for them at a certain point if I'm not carrying your product. If you want me to test them, I'll test them, but I'm not paying for them at that point. So out of ones that I
Why are you going to earn someone's business without sending them product? You know what I mean? Like,
sure, you would think it would behoove them, but the other thing that I do question or wonder is, are they scared to send me their product? You know,
that could be part of it.
that could be it. Or they're.
I mean, imagine I'm a small shop from Michigan calling you up. Hey, Josh Jones, your titanium inserts look cool. Can you send me a half a dozen of them so I can throw on my arrows? Who are you gonna call?
Well, I'm not sending them. You can buy them. That's part of the deal. But
Well, see, then you're just like those other bow manufacturers.
yeah, I'm not trying to expand it though. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, if you wanna put it in a real fair comparison, that's what we're doing. So either they don't want to do that, or they don't feel it's worth their time, or
Yeah.
what have you. But anyway, we did prime. I forgot to grab an elite when I grabbed all these bows, so there's not an elite sitting here.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, we can cover the differences.
Yeah, Elite. I mean, you
Well, you
said
just
it-
shot them.
Yeah, you
right?
said Elite
You tried
didn't.
that.
They didn't reinvent their product a ton, but they also had a good product from the year before. So my experience with Elite was I was pleasantly surprised with the bow and the platform. Had a nice draw cycle, had good speeds, had a really nice grip straight from the factory.
Mhm.
As I'm kind of looking at some of these smaller tier companies trying to compete with the top three, it's just a tough category in that top tier product, man, because they're not pushing the same features or innovation.
Well, and I don't know if it's fair to say they're not top tier because realistically, Hoyt, Mathews, Bowtech, PSC, and Elite all sell a lot of bows. Whoa, close that door. They all sell a lot of bows, and I think Prime sells a pretty good amount of bows too.
Yeah, they do.
I know what their requirements are and where their tiers are. So the number of bows that you have to sell to hit the right price structure in their companies are all pretty significant. So I don't think it's fair to say that they're not a top tier. It's just we only know what sells around here, right? That's all we can really go off of. So Hoyt, Mathews, and Bowtech, just to clarify, we're not bashing anybody. Hoyt, Mathews, and Bowtech are the three best selling bows for us. Now, I think that holds true nationally. I know Mathews is the number one selling bow nationally, but those three brands, I think, are the top 1, 2, and 3 in the country, period, overall. But I just know that's what they are for us.
Yeah.
For sure, and in our area.
Here's what I would say is if you're in the market for bows and you're going in with an open mind, I would certainly include that Elite ethos in your shoot off.
Yeah, it's a very nice bow. I would say my only gripe too with them, they made a really good product and it felt really good and it shot really good and it has some very unique tuning features to it that are unique to them that make life easier for the individual guy trying to do his own work, which I love. They didn't rear mount or front mount anything. So they didn't do the pick. They didn't do the integrate, which is starting to become very standard. Like almost every bow's doing it. And if you're a large scale manufacturer and you're not doing it or addressing it to some degree, that's probably going to be brought up as like a, hey, why not you're doing this? They do have an integrated V-bar bracket, which I appreciate. I like that you're not having to cannibalize where you attach your front stabilizer or a rear mount hole to try to make something work. They actually make their own V-bar bracket with the intent of it working a little more streamlined and be bolted somewhere else so it's easier to tighten and loosen and not affect everything else that's around it. It's like mounting your sight and your quiver and everything off the same hardware point. That's not an ideal scenario. It'd be nice if it was attached in multiple spots so one tightening doesn't affect the other, that kind of thing. And most of your V-bar brackets, when they don't integrate one of the riser, is going in the same place where you mount the front stabilizer or possibly a rear mount hole, which is nice as well. But I think it's authentic innovation to try to make your own V-bar bracket that fits your bow specifically with the intent to be as streamlined and lower weight as possible. And they did do that. So I give them that. I just would have liked to see a front and rear because it seems like everyone's doing that. Like even small companies are doing that, and they just didn't do it. I don't know why. I think using those technologies comes at a cost. Like you have to pay every riser that you cut that on to put the rear on. I don't know about the pick. I'm assuming there's some form of patent and licensing agreement to use a pick mount. I can't imagine that it's free, but I know the IMS there is, the rear mounted rest integration. I know for a fact that costs money. You got to pay a certain dollar amount per bow that you put that on. So maybe they just didn't feel that was worth it. But outside of that, I mean, the bow they made last year and the bow they made this year has the same tuning system, has the same shim system, has the same limb. As far as I know, has the same limb pockets, same turret style system. It's just a different riser. And granted, it is a more appealing bow. Like it'll hold its own. Like that bow tested against any others in its comparable size. Like if you're a 33, 34 inch axle to axle guy, which is mostly what I use, that dimension, it'll hold its own easily. Which the video that we filmed the other day with you, it held its own well.
Yeah, that's out today, so they get to see
that's out today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Down.
Right on. Yeah, so that, I mean, it held its own. Like it did a good job. It's no slouch. It's a good bow.
They're kind of stuck in a little bit of a paradox where they didn't change what was already nice a ton, but a lot of people around them changed a lot. So it looks like they didn't do much.
Well, and they are one of the companies that I would say made a pretty, they came out with a carbon bow last year, right? Where almost no innovation happened last year. Nothing earth-shattering, nothing like destroying the universe of archery, that kind of stuff. And they stuck their neck out and did it then. So traditionally, when somebody makes a big jump in something, usually the next year, there's not a big jump.
Yeah.
So, kudos for them for doing it in the time where everybody expected to be down and not everybody put their best foot forward as far as drastic change. But I think that's part of why you're seeing very little change this year is because they kind of already did that last year.
Well, and to kind of close out Elite, I see why they've created a loyal fan base now. They made a good product.
They do. They make a good product.
They make a solid product. And I'm glad I shot it, glad I learned more about it. And I look forward to the things that they make in the future.
Yeah, they make good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that company. It's just not super popular here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not super popular elsewhere. It doesn't mean they're not a big selling brand. That doesn't mean they don't make good stuff.
No, I could see it picking up some Western market share with the 34-inch bow.
Yeah, it's like they tried to design something that would appeal out here. Where last year's bows that they made wouldn't be as appealing to a Western guy. Not that they wouldn't have appeal, they just wouldn't be as appealing. So,
which one do you want to go to next?
Let's do...
It's all kind of a coin flip, really.
Let's do PSE.
Oh, PSE, yeah. This is another one that...
Let's do PSE. Because this is not our best-selling brand, but it's not that it's not a good brand. It is. It's just not our best-selling brand.
And that is a sweet-looking little bow right here.
That color scheme is dope. I'll give them that.
Dare we call it raw sex appeal?
What color is that? That's like Cryptek, right?
Yeah,
it's some like kind of Cryptek.
It's like a Cryptek earth
it's like a
camo.
It's like a Cryptek zebra. It's like a zebra and Cryptek camo had a baby.
Yeah, and they have the gold cams with the strings accenting the gold cams, and it just looks like.
I will give them that the camo and that finish really dresses up that riser that doesn't like jump out at you as really super cool looking. It is. I mean, when you're dealing with trying to make a bow as light as possible out of carbon, it's only going to look a certain way,
Looks like
what should we highlight on?
Looks like
first
a nice
here?
Package, man.
It is, and we've only been able to take a
package,
look.
This is.
I bet you have underwear that looks just like that, don't you, Tim?
Yeah,
I bet you do. There's some freaking Cryptek a zebra fucking underwear in your drawer. I guarantee it.
I wouldn't talk about that on here.
So you don't want to talk about that. I see how you are. Look at you step back. So we should probably touch on that they made a couple of aluminum bows and this bow, but this is the only production bow we've actually seen. They sent me, my sales rep did me a favor and brought me a 33 that he had that wasn't even the production bow. It was one of the test bows. It was 60 pounds, but we were able to actually test something and give you a report on it early because they don't expect to ship their aluminum bows till like January. So knowing the way this market works and with the launches and whatnot, if you didn't have something to go off of, it's going to be hard to make a decision. And most people are trying to make their decision for what bow they want to buy relatively early, and that really would have held up the show. So he did me a favor, brought me that, and I really greatly appreciate that. But the Mach 30s are what they actually have out right now. And this bow did really well in testing. It really did. I guess my only real gripes on it is that it had more reflex than I think a bow should have.
Yep.
And part of that is the size of the bow, how long the limbs are, the angle you're trying to put things at, and the size of the cam to try to achieve a certain brace height and axle to axle that they're trying to get. And in this instance, you end up with more reflex, which I would like to see redesigned personally. And why that is twofold. One, you'll get an artificially fast speed on a bow that's got a lot of reflex, right?
Okay.
So you're getting, and this goes back into the speed and where I rank bows for speed, even though they say they're this fast, they're actually this fast, but why did you give one a little higher and a little lower? When you put out a lot of reflex to get your speed, I'm not giving you as much credit for it because you're using riser geometry to get your speed and you're taking away from forgiveness because of it. So that's part of it. However, this bow is actually very impressive.
I thought so.
I'll do a best carbon bow video, and I bet you this does really well if it doesn't win it. A couple of things that are new to this. One, they haven't made a 30-inch bow in a while in the carbon world. One, they put an actual machined aluminum roller system on here, which this is kind of industry standard-ish. It's hard to find a bow that has a cable slide anymore that's being taken seriously as a high-end bow. This is kind of a standard. Thank you, Mathews, for creating this idea, and most people pretty much use it. But that's not the easiest thing to integrate to a carbon bow. Two, this is the only U.S.-made carbon bow. The only one, folks. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, but that's also probably part of their capacity and why these seem to have a hard time shipping these within the right amount of realm and frequency. Like these are always backordered a lot. So thank you for making a carbon bow in the United States. Thank you for making a 2-piece quiver mount system in a carbon bow. They didn't do that before. And that's part of why when people will go, oh, well, this bow's heavier than my Mach 34. I'm just going to go with the Mach 34. Did you look at what they did to this bow compared to your Mach 34? No, you didn't, Karen. They added an internal quiver, right? That's going to add weight. There has to be mass internally in the carbon structure to hold this up and an aluminum insert. So when you bolt a piece of aluminum in and bolt a piece of aluminum out, you don't fuck it up. So that's one thing that they did that was going to make this heavier. Having a pick in front and rear and a fixed roller. These things all add weight to something that was already light. But this bow is now coming in at a very reasonable weight. Like this is still, I think, the lightest carbon 30-inch bow when you compare all of them, or it's the same as Elite. It's real close. So this bow, to me, did a really phenomenal job, and it produced some great speed.
Great speed.
It really did, and it's on their smoothest feeling cam.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah. So this is
I
their
just drew
smoothest
it
cam.
back, and it does not feel like a speed cam.
No, and to boot, they still have this removable system here for changing your shims without putting the bow and taking out in a press and taking out the axle.
Dude, picture this though.
They still expect you to put it in a press and take the pressure off it before you do it, but it doesn't have to have the axle removed. What you got?
Picture yourself being a saddle hunter in the Midwest and slapping an offset bar on that thing. Maybe a whisker biscuit and a 3-pin.
I don't know if I can make myself shoot a biscuit.
Maybe not you, but
Even that, I'd still have a hard time doing.
yeah, a 3-pin fixed setup, 20, 30, 40.
Yeah.
And you're a dangerous ass whitetail hunter, not carrying a lot lot of weight.
Right? Oh, and a warm to the touch too to boot.
Yeah.
Now, do keep in mind
And
this
fast.
is
fast
like
as fuck, boy.
Yeah, it's she fast as fuck.
Yeah.
This bow was I think it shot 332 or 334 or something like that in
I
my
think
test.
that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, so it was fast.
Low 330s.
Low 330s, which not a lot of bows shot in the low 330s.
Nope.
They were coming. Well, actually, I should take that back. A lot of bows did shoot in the low 330s. This year's tests, most of the bows tested were high 320s, low 330s. They were all real similar. But for a 30-inch axle to axle, 6-inch brace height bow on an easy drawing cam, like they went away from making 3 different cams on their bows as a stock configuration. You can still buy the higher performance cams and go into the pro shop. They have like a custom build. You can pay a little extra and they'll build you whatever you want.
And will it get faster?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really?
Yes, it'll be faster and more aggressive.
Yeah.
So like this, depending on the configuration, like the one thing they did do for this is either at the peak or really close to the peak. So this bow's going to be fast because this cam's pretty much maxed out. If you put the bigger cam on here that's more aggressive, but it goes to a farther draw length, this might not be much faster with that. So in this exact config. Now, if you go to like a 34 and put this on as your stock cam, you'll get more speed out of the other cams because of where they're peaking.
What do you think about their grip?
Their grip's awesome. Like good square edged, rounded contour.
I thought it was pretty nice.
It's a great grip.
Yeah.
This is a nice bow. I mean, and I don't get why
There's
people
a little-
are like, I was
there's a
hating
little
on this
slew
bow. I'm
of,
not hating on this bow. This is a great bow.
There's a little slew of local shooters, good archers I know that like that bow, or the 34 is what they like, but this is just like the mini-me of the 34 with some features.
Yeah, the 34 is missing some features in it, which would make it probably weigh 4 pounds or maybe a little more, right? If you incorporate these same features that were added to this bow back into the Mach 34, which, mind you, the thing I dislike about the Mach 34 and some of the other stuff is the riser is a lot shorter. So yeah, it's a 34-inch bow, but like if you measure the riser out, Mathews 29.5-inch bows probably got a longer riser than a Mach 34. And riser
That's
length,
kind of wild.
riser length is largely where stability is derived from.
Yeah, riser length is a big deal.
And another thing in vibration to consider is a shorter riser typically vibrates less than a longer riser. And I don't know if that makes
Really?
sense. Yes.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, like think of it this way. Think of a 2x4.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Think of a 2x4.
Longer has more wiggle at the ends.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you've got a 2-foot 2x4 and you hold it in your hand and you smack it on a rock.
Yeah, I get it.
Now grab a 4-foot 2x4 and smack it on a rock. It vibrates way more and flexes way more, even though there's more mass,
Yes.
right? And more mass will absorb vibration. So part of where the scores on vibration that might have gotten better scores with a higher number, it's because how long is this thing? Like the longer you make this thing, the more it's going to vibrate, period. And the lighter you make it, the more it's going to vibrate. So the reflection number isn't necessarily just vibration. It's how much vibration should this have for what they built. So, but this bow is like super impressive. It really is. 30-inch axle-to-axle bows aren't my favorite thing in the world because I'm a Western guy, but like I can totally respect and appreciate tree stand ground blind hunting, Midwest hunting, hanging out of a saddle, trying to shoot 40 yards and in some really awkward situations where something this size or a 29.5 would be great. And for what they built, this is pretty damn impressive.
I think so too.
Like I thought I gave it really good marks, but apparently there's comments down there where I was hating. I don't know what I was hating.
There's always
on,
a few, man.
There's always some Karens down there. Got nothing better to do today than do that. So whatever. But I thought this bow was great. I really did. I thought they did a great job. And I'm going to stress again, only U.S. made carbon bow.
So good job, PSC. But we're not necessarily going apples to apples here because we're looking at aluminum bows. That's the only carbon bow sitting in the pile. But that's what we have until January.
Well, it's the only redesigned carbon fiber riser. All the other carbon fiber bows in the market today did not change their riser or attachment systems at all. Now, Bowtech came out with a carbon 33, but it's the same riser that's on the carbon 30.
Yeah.
So you really didn't redo the riser. You redid the limb pocket, and their other bows scored better and impressed better, so we didn't bring that into this conversation.
Yeah.
Where are we at on time here, buddy?
45 minutes in.
Okay, cool. Just checking.
Yeah, we're doing good.
Okay. So you liked that a lot, right? Thought it was nice?
Well, I haven't had a chance to put many arrows through it, but I drew it back. Thought it was nice. Liked the grip. I was pretty impressed. Like my head right away went to, hey, you're a ground blind guy. You're a short draw guy. You wanna have a light bow. Light's kind of the rage right now. It's definitely trendy, and I mean with light is good because it allows you to place the weight where you want it, and then you can end up having a similarly stable bow with a lighter platform. You know?
Let me touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, you should.
So there is to me, there's like an ideal physical weight to a bow. When you get below 4 pounds, which that's not a knock on
Yeah, I've heard you say this before.
on PSC's 3.8 pound bow, but it seems like when you get below 4 pounds, they vibrate a lot because there's only so much engineering and design that you can put into a bow and not still have it vibrate at a certain weight. So 4 pounds and under, it's hard to eliminate the vibration, Like no matter how many rubber things you bolt onto it or what you add to it or how heavy a stabilizers you add to it, the bows tend to still vibrate under 4 pounds when you get under there. So when you, I like to think that the ideal platform is 4 to 4 1/4. Like if you can start the bow that you're building at 4 pounds to 4 1/4 pounds, somewhere around there, it's going to be the lightest functional bow that you can build while still pretty much eliminating the vibration that exists in it and stability. So to me, that's the ideal platform. I'd like to see a bow 4 to 4 1/4. You get below it, that's cool, but you're still you're and until you make one that doesn't vibrate at all, that's under 4 pounds, I'm just going to believe that if it's under 4 pounds, it's going to vibrate that you can't get rid of.
Yeah, I was going to
say typically vibration relates to noise, like herd noise, which we haven't found an effective way to measure that super well because decibel meters don't do a great job of shot on a bow, but I wish I could effectively measure how loud is this bow when it's going off. Because typically the lighter you go, the louder they get. And it's not, I mean, I talk about vibration, right? But it's really how loud it is. Because it's, what are they hearing? And that's the argument that you'll get a lot for a heavier arrow. It's like, well, it makes your bow quieter. And I don't disagree. I think there's a give and take in there that's ideal.
Yeah, there's a give and take. There's a balance.
Yep.
And I think it's so funny how people want to put you in one camp or the other. Like you're either heavy arrows or you're light arrows. You're this, you're that. But to people to help understand your argument and what I've come to basically align with is you're not saying, hey, I'm shooting a lighter arrow because a lighter arrow goes through stuff equally as well as a super heavy arrow. You're saying I'm shooting a lighter arrow because it's got enough energy to get through the shit that I shoot and it gets there as fast as possible, which also equals forgiveness.
Correct. Yeah, I will typically optimize my setup for what I'm doing with it. Mm-hmm. And I question where the line needs to be drawn at each type of particular thing. Like if I was shooting a 80-pound bow versus a 70-pound bow, I might not shoot as light of an arrow. Like if I had to go down to a 70-pound bow from an 80-pound bow, I might make the arrow weight a little heavier to feel like I'm offsetting my ability to penetrate. But when I'm shooting like 80s, I have shot through everything I've shot at or buried to the fletch easily without, like I've shot into elk like lengthwise with a light arrow. So, and not the most penetrating stuff, arrows broadheads that won't penetrate as good and still getting like ridiculous amounts of penetration. So there's applications for using a heavier arrow. There really are. It's just arguing at what point and what you're doing with it that's more ideal.
Yeah, my trend is just, trending right back towards your ideal because every time I shoot through something, it goes, zips through,
right? And
it's in the dirt behind it. And I'm like, I didn't need all that energy. I could actually take some out and get a little more cutting diameter, which is a really nice thing for, forgiveness on your shot.
Yeah.
Larger holes is going to hit more stuff.
Your recovery rate goes up the bigger the hole you cut in something.
Yep.
And the reaction time goes down the faster your arrow is, right? So they have less time to react. And the faster that arrow gets off of your string, the less your manipulation affects it. So if you slow your bow down, it's attached to you for a longer period of time from when you fire till it leaves. So like, let's say you're torquing 15 degrees, just for a number. Throw a number out there, right? And my bow's going 300 feet a second, and then I pick up another one that's going 250 feet a second. The bow that's going 250 feet a second will miss by a greater margin because it's attached to me for a longer period of time. Because as you torque, as the bow goes off, it rolls the bow, right? Yes. So that 15-degree pitch is the effect of the bow going off, right? So if you slow your bow down, that turn is more. I know it's kind of probably someone's going to say bullshit or whatever, but fine, whatever. But that's the reality of it. The faster you get that thing out of your hand, the less your fuck-ups affect it.
Well, and I've heard that idea surface recently among some target guys too. So when you start to hear an idea surface multiple times, there's usually some validity to it. It's not just witch magic.
Yeah, I mean, there's real authentic validity to it. A lot of the parameters that people choose to use are based in good theory from one application, and they just blindly follow it all the way through everything. You should weigh out everything and value it equally to make a determination for what you're doing is best for what type of piece of equipment you're going to use.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, just as a side shoot to that, Justin told me he spent his Monday shooting probably 100 arrows, who knows, grinding arrows, trying to get his peep height right.
That sounds like Justin.
Yeah, so he spent a whole afternoon shooting a guy who shot his bow for his lifetime, just trying to get his peep height right. But Justin's a guy whose target's very important to, enjoys the process.
Well, if it's any consolation, like every year when I sight in my bows that I intend to shoot farther away with, I move the peep like 10 times. Like I'll go out and shoot it one day, and then I'll change my peep size too. Like I'll have one size in there one day, and then I shoot it all that day, and I shoot it the next day, and it's too small. Go and change the peep out, go back in, shoot that for like 2 or 3 days. It's too big. I had it right the first time. I mean, when you start really nitpicking, it's very easy to do that.
And that's my only gripe with changing bows every year, is when you really get a bow dialed in. You've put months into it, dialing in all these little variables.
Do you want a little secret?
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. You want me?
Tell me the secret.
You want a secret? So when you get that bow that you love, right? That you are just, ooh, baby, this is my baby. No one has ever made me feel like this. That bow probably has an end-to-end lobe off length, which is what terminology I give it. What that means, you draw the bow back and you measure where the string leaves the cam at and measure that distance, right? That's distance number 1. Number 2 is the actual effective draw length that you have that bow set at that you like, right? So you measure that distance. And then number 3 in most is the square vertical measurement off of the center of your arrow to the center of the peep sight. And you make those 3 things. And every bow that you have from then there forward, you match that. And you try to duplicate that perfection you had.
Yeah.
That perfection you had with that perfect lady.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That is what you're looking for. You're looking for those dimensions. And next year, I will probably measure what I call load off length, which is your string angle. That's the only way you can really measure it, because you can't go off of axle to axle. That doesn't work, because the axle isn't where the string leaves the bow at. All the cam sizes are different, right? And all the strings lobe off a different spot on the cam. So the only thing you can effectively check that with to make sure it's the same is where the string leaves the cam when it's at full draw at your draw length. Measure those distances. That's your lobe off length. And you will find like a lot of the bows that we test are like the same axle to axles, right? Their lobe off lengths drastically different from one to the next. So it makes you'll have a bow that's shorter in axle to axle that feels longer than this longer axle to axle bow. And axle to axle, honestly, it's a measurement that everyone goes off of, but it shouldn't exist. Just like brace height is a measurement that matters, but reflex is the measurement that matters more. But they emphasize brace height. How much reflex is in that, though? Like, you give me a bow that's got an inch of reflex with a 6-inch brace height, and I bet you money it shoots better than a bow that's got a 7-inch brace height with 2 inches of reflex, or 2.5. Both of those things help, but the reflex geometry in the riser, to me, makes a bigger difference.
That's a motherfucking pro tip right there, dude.
Whoop, whoop.
Well, here's the deal, guys. Come in here for a second. I want you to take your greasy little mitts and hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to this, because this is going to end up being a long mega podcast.
Mega.
This is a long mega podcast.
How do we like the vocal sound effects, by the way? Is this good? Or comment down below on how dumb or funny I sound.
Yeah. So we're going to restoke the fire. We're going to restoke our drinks. We're going to get it kicking for round 2. So come back next week. Subscribe wherever you're listening. Leave this thing a review. And we appreciate you guys. We're going to finish the Mega Bow podcast. We're going to finish it next week, guys.